I'm Tim Selwood, now an ambassador for the Trust. We had a family company. My father, though, died at the age of 56. We then had to sell the company. I had a share, and that went to buy Furzey Gardens. I was looking at a number of places where I could use this money that had come into my hands for something purposeful and significant. It so happened that when this money became available, Furzey Gardens was up for sale. I knew about Furzey Gardens because my brother had the field next door, and I'd seen it often in the distance and thought, that's a curious looking place. I never went there. It was 8 acres of azalea garden that had been beautifully set out in the early 1920s. When I got there, it had gone to sleep. It had been allowed to run wild. And it was as though it was waiting to be woken up. I went along to the auction to bid for it. I did manage to outbid the other people that were bidding for them. And so as I acquired the 3 lots, I could then put it back together again as one garden. And people thought it was madness, to buy it.
So the first 3 or 4 years was a major operation of clearing out all these overgrown areas. There were sort of areas the size of a couple of tennis courts, which nobody had been in for 30 years. You could sort of see trees sticking out the top of these massively overgrown azaleas.
When we came, there was a cast iron range in there, which we took out. And behind it was a bread oven.
Oh, that's still there.
Yeah, it was bricked up when we came. And of course we found a hidden hoard of coins. You know
Did you?
that?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. It wasn't of a Spanish galleon. It was a George II penny.
Okay.
And I've got it in a case to have it put up.
Yeah.
And what used to happen was when they laid a new floor, they put a penny under it for luck.
Okay.
It goes back an amazing distance when you think about it, because as the timbers came out of a ship, so say that is supposed to have been built 400 plus years ago, the ship timbers probably were 100 years old.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's 500 years, and they would have been cut from a tree for that size. How old do you reckon the tree would have been?
300 or 400 years old easily.
So that's taking us 800 or 900 years back for the
fantastic.
timber in the cottage.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Yeah.
Yes. You weren't there then, were you?
No, I can't remember anyway.
It feels
Yes,
as though we were sometimes, doesn't it?
When we started replanting back in the 90s and into the 2000s, I really wanted to make sure we kept the rarity value of the garden. So up until then, a lot of the planting was from the 1920s and 30s. These very rare plants coming in from China and Japan. Plant there from Chile. This one's from America, a maple from America. Behind it is another maple from China. I can see a styrax from Japan. So just in one sweep, we've got the entire world in front of us. This garden has always been a fabulous sight in spring. And in the spring we have all the azaleas, the rhododendrons, the primulas. There's always tons of colour. Over the last 20 years I've concentrated on trying to extend the season so all the colour extends into the autumn. So this is one of the Japanese maples. They're well known for giving great autumn colour. This is just starting to change, but within about 3 or 4 weeks it'll be a deep scarlet, and it'll hold its leaf for another month or 2 before it drops. So many of the maples have good autumn colour, and that's why we've planted so many. We have about 200 in the garden, different species, different varieties, and it's quite a feature of this garden.
Very early on, people started coming in quite large numbers. We wanted to preserve the gardens as they were, enable people to enjoy them as they were. So it's been a wonderful journey to do that with the gardens.
What kind of condition was it in when you arrived, the cottage?
The cottage, Arthur Knowlton was still living in it.
Right, yeah.
And the stories we all know is there used to be 13 children living in it. And of course our local timber merchant's grandfather was born in it.
Okay.
So it's got real local connections.
And did the Arthur Knowlton, did they have running water and all that kind of?
Yes, there's
Sure.
in the, what was the kitchen was like that little narrow corridor bit, and there's
Sure.
the stone sink there
Okay.
with a tap.
That was
it.
Okay.
That was their kitchen,
Okay.
and the shallow stone sink was her
Right.
washing up area.
Right.
There wasn't a toilet in there ever.
Okay. Right. So outside loo, presumably.
Yeah, I wonder where it was. Might find it one day when you're digging.
My wife and I got involved with the local church, and they asked me to start a group for the local teenagers. And two of the teenagers turned out to be Tim Selwood's son and daughter. And it was after church one day that he came up to me and said, "You spend a lot of time in Minstead these days." And I said, "Yes, we do." He said, "What would you do if we gave you a house to live in and 3 acres of land?" And he sort of, I was probably standing there with my mouth open, you know, and he said, "Well, go away and think about it." So we thought, well, we're going to spend the rest of our lives wondering what if we don't do it.
Everybody who knows Tim just knows how this place has become an expression of his fantastic compassion and generosity. Tim had this, strong background of faith and ethos and wanting to improve the lot of everybody they could.
We decided that we would introduce some learning disabled people.
So I came to Tim with the idea of a small training project for people with learning disabilities based around horticulture. And that's how it happened.
So I just like doing work around the grounds and sweeping the paths up and everything. Talking to the public, telling them what Furzie and Minstead is and everything.
When we first started, I was soon aware that it was a different place, and that sense of difference was great. I really loved that.
Lots of people who visit say that they just felt in the atmosphere when they arrived that it was a very special place. And I think it just must come down to the caring side of it, that everybody who works here, everybody who volunteers here, just really cares for each other.
I've enjoyed the years of working with people who have learning disabilities. Even though it's demanding, it's extremely rewarding. I love the way so many will accept you as you are.
Great. Mulching's a really great job, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's really good for the plants.
and I find it relaxing.
It is. You're right. It is relaxing. It's good for you. It's good for the plants. Makes
And
it.
you don't have to weed it.
That's right. We don't have to weed so much, which is why we like doing it.
I've learnt as much from people with learning disabilities as I've ever been able to give them.
We were embracing the differences that people we worked with came with and celebrating them. Over the years, that kept going, and we were able to sustain that, and actually became something which we defended, our right to be different.
It's having that breadth of tasks as well, I think. Knowing that everybody's got something that they can excel in. That's what underpins it. I think we all have a faith that people have got something that they can excel at. And it's just that lovely challenge of finding the key that unlocks that.
Horticulture is just very good at teaching work skills because you've got very fine skills like the sowing of seeds, the pricking out of seedlings, potting up. And then you've got the more heavy-duty skills, people who love to turn a piece of land and use machinery on it. So horticulture as a means, it's not necessarily the end. Doesn't mean everyone's going to move on into something horticultural. It's identifying skill levels and types of skill.
So many things I've heard him say which have just stuck in my mind. One thing I remember him saying is about how important it is to celebrate the non-celebrities. And he was talking about the folk that we work with who aren't celebrities, but still got so much that we can celebrate about them.
The mission was bringing everybody together to help people with reaching their potential, and it just does that. It really does do that.
I just love the way that was the core of the project. That was a real backbone.
I just think it's important for the Trust to always be aware of its specialness. And if they can maintain that specialness, then that will be its true survival.
I went to the Chelsea Flower Show 2010, and I looked at all those show gardens and I thought, God, we could do one of these. Sure we could.
He came back and announced that he thought we should do it. And I sort of took a bit of a gulp and I thought, okay, he probably means one of these small displays. And I thought, yeah, we can have a go at that. But of course, being Tim, that wasn't what he was thinking of. He was thinking of the major show gardens. It was a bad time for the learning disability sector. Austerity cuts had just started to bite. Everybody was struggling, and we really felt that we need to do something to really show what the people that we work with could do and could achieve.
People started getting enthused about this idea. Others were saying, don't be stupid, you've never even done a large flower show, let alone go to the Chelsea Gardens. What are you thinking of? You don't know anything about it.
He'd set his mind upon organising this, and there was a couple of crises, at least in the middle of winter, and I was freezing cold, and spent all day sorting the plants out for the show, and saying to Tim, "Are you sure about this? Have you not got any doubts?" And he said, "No, I'm absolutely sure. I've got no doubt."
You've got to produce an isometric plan. You've got to have a planting plan, 2,500 bedding plants, tons and tons of earth.
We had no money to start off with, so there was a huge fundraising project.
People in Furzie would give 50 pence towards it, 25 pence. One person came and gave £10,000.
We hired in some enormous machinery, a thing called a tree spade with these enormous digging blades. Getting, a tree weighing, a couple of tons into the back of a lorry is quite complicated. It's
a very challenging thing to do. And no concessions were made to the fact that we had a learning disability team.
The students were involved with everything. So it started off with the design. We all got together and they were all offering their ideas about what the gardens meant, what we wanted to take from the gardens to show what we did.
They went up to London, they lived in a house for 3 weeks, I think it was, and some of the people we supported went up as well for a day or two and stayed overnight. It must have been a very, very wet May, April and May. Just the memory of them and the people we support scuttling around in the pouring rain.
For the first 3 weeks of the build, it virtually rained every day, so we were just falling around in mud. When we were there, we felt like outsiders with an outside chance. You could see people coming along and watching what we were doing and sort of being polite, but you could tell that they thought, amateurs or whatever. When you have the celebrity day, when all the celebrities come in, they were able to hobnob with them, and that was great. You know, it was a great experience for everybody. As it developed, you know, it just got more and more beautiful, more and more wonderful, and it was an utter distillation of the whole essence of the gardens and the whole essence of what we did there with the students.
A garden created by adults with disabilities, based at a New Forest charity, won a gold medal at the Chelsea Flower Show.
A garden of hopes and dreams that became the garden of possibilities and achievements.
In the end, it paid off really well because we won a gold, which was a fantastic experience for us. We were told that the Queen and the royal party might come past, and we had to have some posh clothes to wear. And I didn't have anything, so I got a couple of hours off and wandered up the King's Road to find some charity shops. And I was moping around in some charity shops trying to find a jacket and a shirt and some trousers which would pass muster. And I thought, what am I doing? This is crazy.
They announced the medals on a Tuesday morning, you know. When we got the gold, we said, right, let's get everybody into coaches and get them up there. Get all the gold stuff we can find so we can wave it up there. And we did. We sort of took the show over the next day.
It was a great sense of relief as well, that it had all been worthwhile. And it was a very special feeling and a real sense that we'd been able to do something quite special. I think if we hadn't, I would have been a broken man. It would have been quite difficult, I think, if we hadn't done well.
Well done, Tim, for giving us that opportunity. I wouldn't want to repeat it, but it was amazing.
The only person who had any experience was Chris Beatrill, the designer, and he was great. He was the only designer I think that would have worked with us, actually.
We always knew that this project had a real narrative, it had a real function. In fact, the primary function wasn't Chelsea, the primary function was to develop the opportunities here at Furzie. And so to see the team having practiced at Chelsea Flower Show, to then produce it in reality here is wonderful.
It cost us quite a lot, I think about 70,000 to do, but the garden next door spent 3 million on this, and they got a bronze and we got a gold. So it says something for it, doesn't it?
Winning the gold, getting all the publicity through the television or the local publicity made a big difference to us. It kept our visitor numbers up during the year when many other gardens were struggling, and it really helped the profile of learning disability in general and in particular about what we could do here at Furzey Gardens.
The reason for going to Chelsea wasn't to win a gold medal. It was to show, in the best publicised way that we could manage, how vital learning disabled people are to our community. What could be achieved by learning disabled people and other vulnerable people, other disabled people, if they've got the right resources and they're properly integrated with everybody else. And that's one of the things that motivated us. We've got to show what can be achieved.